Okay. Hi, Sister Andrea.
Hello, Sister Abia. How are you?
Pretty good, pretty good. So today we're going to be doing an interview with you, and I just want you to share, whatever y'all puts on your heart to share. The first thing I'm going to ask you is, what was your upbringing like?
My upbringing, I was I was actually born and raised Seventh-day Adventist. I'm probably maybe third generation Seventh-day Adventist. Um, Almost 50 years old, so I've been in it majority of my life, and it was all I knew.
Wow.
If anybody had ever told me that um, at my age that I would question the things that I was taught, I would have told you that you were a complete nut. I would have told you that you were an absolute nut. There's no way um, everything that I was ever taught to believe was, or I saw it as being biblical.
Mm.
But the thing is that in all those years, I had never, ever read the Bible from beginning to end on my own.
Like many,
Ever.
like
I
many.
have never, um, like I
Mm.
said, I am almost 50 years old and I am just now reading it from beginning to end on
Wow.
my own. And a lot of the things that I was grown up believing, I am
Mm.
finding that that is not the case,
Wow.
that it is not, in fact, biblical. And it has been an eye opening and very, very challenging
Mm.
thing to go through.
Right.
I questioned I questioned things that I believe for a long time.
Really?
Let me kind of backtrack a little bit.
Okay.
We all know that we all know in the beginning of Revelation we're told about the seven churches. And I'd probably say within the last maybe 10 to 15 years of my life,
Mm.
I have felt within myself that I was Laodicean. I knew it. I felt it with everything in me.
Mm.
It's like I felt like I had all this knowledge, but it just, that's all it was knowledge. And I had for so long, and there are a few friends that can actually attest to this. For so long, I have wondered, I'm missing that fire.
Mm.
You hear all these new converts coming to the church and they just have this zeal, this zest, and I'm like, where is mine?
Mm.
Why don't I have it? If I
Right.
have all this truth, all this knowledge, where is my zest? Why don't I have it?
Mm.
Why am I still Laodicean? What good is all this knowledge if I'm not on fire?
Right.
And it was like this pain in my side that would not go away. Every
Wow.
now and then it might kind of dull down, but it never went away. It was just there.
Ah.
And there were times that I remember sitting out in my car at night, literally crying, just ooh, ooh crying to Yah and saying, something is wrong.
Oh. Wow.
Something's wrong. Something is amiss
Mm.
because I can't possibly be in this truth and it not change me.
Mm.
Where is this change supposed to come into play?
Right.
You promised that, whatever work that you began in us, you would see through to the day of your son. So we all know he's coming back soon. When
Right.
exactly is this work going to be finished? Because something is wrong. I'm not. I'm not finished baking yet, so to speak.
Right, right, right. Yes.
I'm not
Right.
finished baking.
Mm.
So little by little, I found little tidbits of truth that were against what I was taught in the church. And it was just recently that Yahuwah allowed me to kind of reflect backwards and say, you know what? You realize that every single time you were introduced to something that was counter to what you were taught, it lit a spark in you. It
Mm.
started something in you,
Wow.
and you would have this this verve, this zeal to go out there and to share that with everybody. But then after a while, once you became settled in that truth, it's like you needed something new. And so I would present you with something else new. And once again, you would have this zeal, this verve. And I was so hoping that you would realize that this box that you've placed yourself in is hindering me from allowing you to be taught the things that I want you to see. And, when that revelation came, I was just like, huh, now that kind of starts to make sense. It was maybe just even a few months ago that I had started praying and asking him, I said, you know what, please just take off the blinders.
Mm.
Take off the blinders. And I know it's not going to be easy. There are things that are going to challenge me because this is all that I've ever known. And so it's very difficult for me to read the Bible outside of the lens of Adventism, if that makes
Mm.
sense.
Yes, yes.
A lot of the doctrines and things that I had heard and learned growing up, when I read certain things in the Bible now, I'm looking at it through the lens of Adventism. And he's
Mm.
like, I need you to read what I wrote.
Mm.
Allow me to impress upon your mind what I wrote instead of trying to fit it into your own box.
Steve.
And that is a struggle. It is something that I still go through to
Wow.
this day.
Mm.
It's
Mm.
it is one thing to come out of something. It's something entirely different to have that come out of you.
Mm. Right, right. I think that's the same for all of us that have come out of,
Yes,
religion. Hmm.
I'm finding that little by little, the more truth he trusts me with
Mm.
is the more that I find myself saying, you know what? Um, if this is not for me, if something is not for me, I need you to show me.
Mm.
Even if it's uncomfortable for me, I need you to show me.
Right.
Even so much as, last night I was sitting down at my computer because I'm like setting up a little online shop for myself and my daughter.
Mm. Oh.
And I had started putting up some digital products on there for
Hmm.
Mother's Day.
Okay.
And I sat down and I looked at my computer screen last night
Mm.
and I said, yeah, I don't want to put anything in my shop that is going to detract from you, that is
Mm.
going to cause anybody to worship any other mighty ones than
Mm.
you.
Wow.
So if this is pagan, if
Mm.
anything in it is pagan, I need you to show me. And regardless of how pretty I may have designed, these products, and I knew that they would have sold,
Right.
I had to say, it is your will, it's not mine. I don't want to misrepresent you in any way, shape, or form. So if this is not of you, then you're going to have to show me. And sure enough, he showed me, and
Hallelujah.
I had to delete those listings.
You will do.
And I was like, you know what?
Mm.
It's all you.
Mm.
It's
Wow.
all you.
What's his
It is
ruach?
all you.
Mm.
So
Wow. Yes. Now you're developing that personal relationship. And I mean, like now because you heard what you said, you asked him to show you. And
Yes.
he said he definitely
Yes.
did. And that's beautiful because you're going to him, instead of
Yes.
everybody else. I want you to show me, Father. And that's a personal relationship. So that's beautiful.
I
That's
will tell you, I was I was jealous. I was so jealous. I remember having prayers with you and saying, you know what? This does not sit right with me. You are not going to have relationships with everybody else, and I don't have you to. No, that's not going to work. That's not going to work. I'm not happy with that. I am jealous. So we are going to have a relationship. And it's almost like I could see him just sitting on his throne saying, you know what? This is what I've been waiting for you to say so long, for so long. But I had to start setting up times on my cell phone. I would set an alarm and entitled it Date with YAH. And I would set it up and, I would get up and be like, all right, I'm ready.
well,
We're going to have a date.
all right. That's awesome. Wow, that is beautiful. That is beautiful. And I bet you now, since you have done that, he's been revealing so much. Like you said before at the beginning, how he's been revealing so much to you since you've been
He
doing
has.
that.
He
Wow.
has. He
Wow.
has. So many things that he's shown me. Defects in my character has been a big one.
For
A
all of
big
us,
one. And that is not an easy pill to swallow, let me tell you.
it's a daily perfecting.
It is something else. But, there are times where I'm just now getting into the habit of asking him to not only put on his armor every day, but for him to just fill me with his presence so that everything that I say, every decision that I make, everything that I do throughout the day is a reflection that he lives in me.
Mm,
And, so many times I may go throughout my day and not really realize just how much that he's doing.
mm,
But at the end of the day, when I get ready to go to bed, I'm like, you know what? Today was actually an amazing day. I
mm.
didn't yell at anybody. I wasn't short tempered.
Wow.
The stresses that came my way, they didn't overwhelm. Today was actually a really good day. And I'm just like, wow, okay, so that's how it works. I
Right.
like this.
Yes. Right. Right. Wow. That is amazing. That is so good to hear, Andrea. Andrea. Wow. So really what you're saying is it was a generational thing. It all of your family members from the line on down. They were
Pretty
all
much. Pretty
wow.
much from my grandfather, my grandmother, right on down. Aunts, uncles, brothers, sisters, parents, everybody, right on
And
down. And I
you
mean, that's how I raised my children. I raised my children the same way
were
because that was all I knew.
right.
And um, I will tell you now that the news is going to come out. As of right now,
I was just about
my
to ask
family,
you about it.
they do not know
Really?
that they do not know
I was just about
that
to
I
ask.
have walked away from Adventism. And that
Wow.
was a huge, huge decision for me.
I
I
bet.
fought that tooth and nail. With
I bet.
everything that is in me, I fought it.
I bet.
But with everything that he has shown me, I can't I can't go back. I can't. I don't want to go back. I don't want to go back to a place where I don't want to go back to a place where I questioned my salvation. I
Mm,
don't want to go back to a place um, where I wondered whether or not everything that I did was going to be enough. I don't want to go back to a place where I did not feel like I had confidence in the words that I was reading in the scriptures.
It's not a good place.
That's honestly how I felt. You know, the things that I read in the scriptures and then the doctrines that I heard, I did not feel like my salvation was secure. And that was a very scary place to be in. It was extremely scary. So much apprehension, so much anxiety. And it led me on this path of wanting to do more. And I'm like, how much more can I do? But my righteousness is like filthy rags. There's nothing that I can do to earn salvation.
No. So that's the mindset.
Either that was the mindset that I had. When I was in Florida, I was involved in prison ministries with my best friend.
Oh, okay.
And I have to thank her for it. I really do. Because
nice.
She was the one who first off told me about the Trinity. She told me the truth about the Trinity, and I am so thankful to Yahuwah, because I will admit I am not the most learned person on the planet. I'm not. I don't have any theological backing. I've never gone to school for theological studies or anything like that. There are probably people that could run circles around me as far as the scriptures are concerned. But what I am so happy that Yahuwah has given me is a spirit to listen. And so there was one day that we were over at the jail, and for whatever reason, the jail was on lockdown. So we sat out front, and that's when she took the opportunity to talk to me about the Trinity. And so I said, okay. And so she asked me to explain it. For the first time in my life, I really couldn't explain it. I could not explain the God that I was supposedly worshiping. And so when she explained the truth to me about who God really is, I just kind of looked at her like, okay. And I left it at that. I didn't think that it was any big deal. Well, knowing her personality, she was not going to let it go. So she started sending all kind of video links and websites and stuff to my phone, to my email. I mean, she lit up my email and my phone every day. And I would just, politely tell her, thanks, and leave it at that. I really wasn't studying it.
Right.
And I had an online ministry on Facebook as well at the time. And this was so funny because this had pretty much gone on for about 3 or 4 months, where she was sending me stuff and I really wasn't responding to her. And she had told me that she had been praying, constantly saying, you know what, Daddy, is she listening? Is she even reading this stuff? Because she's not responding. And he's telling her, like, you know what, let me work with her in my time. You just do what I told you to do, and I will work with her. So I had this ministry on Facebook where, I'm sharing, prophecies and stuff that I have known, that I grew up with in the Adventist church. And there was a guy on that ministry page who was a devout Catholic. And so we were constantly bumping heads. And so one day he actually sent me a message in the group. And he says to me, why exactly are we arguing? He's like, we worship the same God, don't we? And the most troubling part of it was I could not answer that question. I could not answer the question. And I sat there kind of looking at my phone going, okay, why can't I answer? Because we both worship the Trinity, right? And almost as clear as a bell, I heard Yahuwah say to me, tell him no. and I will show you who I am. Oh my, no, I could not have heard that. I did not hear that. And so he asked me again. I could see, the little icon showing that he was typing. And he says, why are we fighting? Because we both worship the same God. And I'm like, why can't I say yes? And once again, I heard that voice. Tell him no, and I will show you who I am. So I finally said no. Now, keep in mind, I did not believe it. But I said no, because after that voice says, like, tell him no. I was like, all right, well, I want to know who exactly you are. So I'm curious. I'm just going to say no. So I said, no, we don't. That was the last I ever heard from that person. They never messaged me again. They never asked who I worship. That was it. That was the end of the conversation. So then I started looking at these videos and reading the things that my friend had sent me and praying about it. And Yahuwah started showing me that he is indeed a father who has a son. And I mean, the revelations that just came, it blew my mind. That was the first time that I ever kind of looked back at my church and said, wait a second. This is not the God that we claim to worship as a denomination. This is completely different from what I was taught in church and what's written on our website and our bulletin and everything else. How can we claim to be worshiping the God of the Bible if this is not who he is? This is huge.
Right.
I mean, if the very foundation of the God you worship is wrong, if the foundation is shaky, everything else built on that foundation is going to be shaky. And I mean, I didn't even realize the magnitude of, put it this way, I didn't realize the magnitude of the wormhole, excuse me, that I had opened at that point. I was just like, okay, well, I opened up this door, but I'm pretty sure that this is not the end of it. There's going to be a lot of things that I am going to find out along the way.
Right.
It took me a long time to kind of fall in and be settled in that truth. Because, for so long, growing up in the church, you hear that, in the last days, there's going to be deceptions. And, if it were possible, the very elect would be deceived. And so I was reluctant to let go of what I knew to be true. And I'm sitting there thinking, it's like, you know what? Is this one of those winds of doctrine that's going to come by and excuse me, let me get some water.
Uh-huh.
I said, is this one of those winds of doctrine that's going to come by and try to, sweep me away from my foundation?
Right.
And there was one morning, a few months later, after that revelation, that I was getting up for work. And I had opened up my closet to grab my scrubs. And as soon as I opened my closet, it was almost like Yahuwah had just laid out this map in front of me. I couldn't even move. I just stood there looking at it. And it was just a pinpointing of all these different people and situations and experiences that he had laid out in my life in order to bring me to the position that I was in at that very moment. The reason why I had never heard from that guy on that Facebook group again was because he was placed there to bring me to the moment where I was. And that was such a revelation for me that I remember laughing and crying at the same time. I didn't even know how to react to that. And so I said, okay, you know what? If you have gone through this much to bring me to this point, you're not going to bring me to a point where you would lead me into deception. If you ask me to say no, that you would show me who you are. You were not going to deceive me. You were not going to lead me into deception. So, you know what? I have a choice to make. Either I'm going to allow you to continue to lead me, or I'm going to disregard what you've shown me and go back into error. No, I'm going to accept the truth.
Yeah.
And I held on to that. And as we became settled in that truth, and he allowed me to be opened up into a few other things in truth. As I became more open to receiving those truths, I realized that the more truth I got was the further I got away from everybody else. It
Welcome to
was
the
the
club.
further I got away from everybody else.
Right.
And I don't think that it was so much the fact that I wanted to push everybody away.
Mm.
It was the fact that I knew that everybody is not going to accept the truths that I'm finding.
Mm-hmm.
I had to come to a place where I had to shut off every voice I heard. And that was difficult. It was very difficult. Even people within the truth that I am, you know, that I am very happy to surround myself with.
Mm-hmm.
I said, Yahuwah, I need to know the sound of your voice. I need to know it distinctly. It can't sound like, Brother Rashia or Sister Abia or, my sister Palessa or anybody else.
Yes.
I have to hear your voice.
Right. Just the
And
right
so
way.
I had to unplug
Mm.
from everybody and everything. There are a lot of people who don't know that I've had to walk away from everything. I even shut down my Facebook page for a while because I was like, I want no social media distractions. I don't need any other distractions. This was
Right.
a period of praying and fasting for me, and an indeterminate amount of time. I didn't go into this saying, I'm going to fast for 3 days. I promised you, I said, I'm going to fast until I hear your voice clearly. So if you tell me that that's 3 days, fine. If you tell me that that's 10 days, fine. But I'm not coming out of this until something changes. I cannot come out of this fast the same way I went in. I refuse. Something has to change.
Steve.
And it
Mm-hmm.
did. It did. It was not easy by any means. But within that period, I had said, Yahuwah, I don't want any part of paganism.
Right.
I don't. I don't want any to do with anything that does not directly reflect you. So, I mean, even if that's right down to your name, if that's down to, I don't care what it is.
Mm-hmm.
If it's false, I don't want to have anything to do with it. I've spent so much of my life in deception. And with every little piece of truth that I get, in the beginning, it angered me. It angered me to no end, I will tell you. I felt like I was violated in the worst way.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I think after several years of just asking him to show me the truth, I don't I don't necessarily have that feeling of violation anymore. Now it's of, you know what? Thank you. Thank you for showing me the truth. Thank you for showing me the way so that I can walk in it. Even if that means that I have to walk away from everything else and everyone else that I've ever known. Thank you.
Yeah. And that
So
strength, already only comes from him.
it only comes from
Yes.
him.
And
It
that comes
only
from
comes from
you
him.
developing that relationship with him and saying, I want you to show me, which is the right way. We always encourage having a personal relationship and letting Yah, show you the way that you should go. And so that's great to hear that, you did that and how he's revealing himself to you each day.
More and more, more and more.
Awesome.
For the funny thing is, I had asked him to show me who I am in him. I needed to know who I was. It was going to be very difficult for me to see who he is and not know my identity in him.
Right.
When I started really looking into the scriptures, and I have to thank you and your husband for that documentary from Joshua to, girl, let me tell you, that documentary was something else.
Really?
I was glued to my laptop
Really?
when I watched that, but it
Wow.
put me on the path to actually studying and finding out who I am, where I come from,
Right.
and basically the history that was not just hidden from me, it was stolen. The history that was stolen from me.
Yes.
And to look at it now, and when I open my Bible and I read, I'm like, those aren't just words, those aren't stories. That's my history. That's my culture.
We finally know our history. Finally.
You know your history. You know where you come from. You know where you belong. And things hit different. When I finally surpassed Deuteronomy 28 and I read that, I was like, man, all you ever wanted was your people to be loyal. That's all you ever wanted. We could have had it all.
Yes, we could have. Yes.
All you ever wanted was your people to be loyal.
Yes.
And when I looked at it, I'm like, you know what? Yahuwah, have mercy. Have mercy for the amount of times that I have failed. Have mercy on the amount of times that we, as a people, as your children, have failed. How hard is it not to walk after other mighty ones? It just hit completely different.
Right.
Completely different. And I said, you know what? With your help, Yahuwah, I am not going to walk in the same mistakes as our ancestors did.
Right.
I can't. I can't.
Can't do it. And just to think how that information has been hidden from us for so long,
So
long.
I will tell you, in finding out that information, immediately when I found out, I did this. I sat up, my shoulders went back in my head. Instantly, I was like, I know who I am. You walk different. Your posture is different. Everything about you.
Yes, and so does your children too. When you allow them to see, because they're like, wow. So, okay, now I don't have to feel inferior.
Exactly. Everything changes.
My ancestors were kings and queens.
Yes, ma'am.
It runs in my line, in my bloodline.
I tell you, you could not wipe the smile off my face when I found out. You could not wipe the smile off of my face. I was like, for so long, I have searched. And to think that we have so many brothers and sisters out there who don't know.
I know.
You don't know that Yahuwah has called you to be a royal priesthood, a peculiar people. He has called you to stand tall. He has called you to be the salt of this earth. What are you doing, brother? What are you doing, sister?
I know. And just to think of anybody that would want this information hidden, it's like, wow. Why would you, if this is what it does for people? Because he doesn't wish for any of us to perish. And
Not
there's
one.
a lot of people too who can, who come into this understanding and knowledge, and it helps them to draw closer to Yah. And that's the purpose of it. That should be the purpose for every one of us, to draw closer to him.
Yes.
So that should be something
Absolutely.
that everybody uplifts, because we're supposed to be worshiping in spirit and truth,
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
like, I would like to ask you, like, what were some things? I know you mentioned the Trinity. What other things did you notice that was off from the scriptures?
Biggest one of the biggest doctrines specific to the Seventh-day Adventist faith is the investigative judgment. And that is one of those doctrines that it caused me to panic, because there's this idea that even though we accept salvation by grace, we're still going to be investigated. Well, who on this earth is going to be investigated and not be found wanting? Everybody's righteousness is as filthy rags, so there's nothing that any of us could ever do that would ever make us worthy of salvation. Right. But the idea was that, after Christ, or after Yahushua had gone back to heaven, that, once his sacrifice was accepted, that in 1844 he left from the holy place in the sanctuary in heaven to go into the most holy place. Well, the problem is that when you look in Acts at the stoning of Stephen, he states that he looks up into heaven and he sees the Son sitting next to the Father. So then that begs the question, okay, even in the sanctuary on earth, the tabernacle that was in the wilderness, what throne room was in the holy place? There was no throne in the holy place. The only throne has always been in the most holy place. That's where the Father stays. So, it really caused me to think. And then the idea that we would be, that Yahuwah's children for any particular period of time would be on the earth without an intercessor. That was absolutely terrifying to me. And I remember actually crying to Yahuwah and saying, why would you leave us? I mean, at a time when the world is chaotic, when, the time of trouble is going on, why would you leave us without an intercessor? That is the time that we need you the most. And so I began to question and say, well, wait a second. There are verses in the scriptures that say, you will never leave us nor forsake us. Were those true? Were those not true? I began to ask so many questions. I can't tell you how much I panicked at the very thought that, he would be looking for a people that at the toughest time in history would have to survive without an intercessor. I will tell you, I had sleepless nights. I panicked. I feared. And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, you tell us not to have the spirit of fear. You haven't given us a spirit of fear. But what else am I supposed to do? When I hear that, the time of trouble that's coming is supposed to be like nothing that anyone has ever witnessed before, and I'm supposed to survive without an intercessor? Without your guidance? You know what? 99.9% of the time, I struggle even to make it through the day with your intercessions. So how would I ever make it without it? Yeah. So
So from my understanding, it's they I guess the doctrine is, well, part of the doctrine is your judgment is here on earth. 'Cause that's what I read. They said
Yes.
that that judgment is here on
Yes,
earth.
from
There's no
1844,
afterlife.
the judge, yes, that Yahushua has begun judgment of those that are living on
Right,
earth.
right.
And so I'm beginning to think it's like, okay, well, I have backslidden so much
Hmm.
in my life. Is how would he ever find me worthy? There's,
Many of us, many of
I
us.
can't tell you the level of apprehension. And I also won't even sit here and state that I know the doctrine in its entirety.
Wow.
That
Okay.
is one of those that is one of those doctrines that I think the vast majority of Seventh-day Adventists probably don't really know for themselves. They
Wow.
know based on what the pastor says, and
Hmm.
they can pick out certain nuances and points about it. But if you ask them to sit down and to show you from the scriptures and formulate this doctrine, I think the majority of Seventh-day Adventists would not be able to do so.
Wow.
I
That
think
is
the
something.
majority of them wouldn't be able to do so.
So it's really similar to the different doctrines as well, the different
Oh
denominations in
yes.
Christianity. It's similar.
Oh yes.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Because what you're describing is something similar, like even in, at the beginning, before coming into this knowledge of truth, I still didn't understand a lot of the word. I wasn't reading the Bible. We just go to
Hmm.
church and hear people say, or if I did, it was most of the time what the pastor would say to read, or what
Right.
he discussed in the church for that day.
Hmm.
But to actually go and read it from the beginning to the end, no way. And that's
Yeah.
many,
Uh,
many people.
That is quite a lot of people.
Yes, yes.
Quite a lot of people. And I know that there have been times that I've committed to myself that I was going to, and I would start it. And like most people, when you start getting into Leviticus and Deuteronomy and all the, the different names and the different feasts and sacrifices, you just kind of blank out and you're like, yeah, you know what, I'll do that later. Or you kind of start with the New Testament and then you forget all about the Old Testament. There's a
Mhm.
host of things. But I
Right.
was like, you know what? No, I need to know. I need to read it from beginning to end.
It's important.
And the thing is that even in conjunction with reading it from beginning to end, I have been watching some sermons and documentaries on the history, the true history of the scriptures. And that has been solidifying and actually putting into color what I've been reading. So it's almost like I'm able to visualize what I am reading in the scriptures. And it becomes living to
Mhm.
me. I can see it in a way that I never saw it before. And I can now identify with a lot of the things that happen. I'm pretty sure that there are many people who can relate to the fact of reading things in the scriptures and just kind of thinking that they're stories. They're things that just happened
Right.
back then.
Mhm.
It's something entirely different to be able to say, you know what, I can identify with this.
Mm.
This is a part of my personality. These are things that I struggle with.
Right.
And I can see why I struggle with it. It's in my bloodline,
Mhm.
it's in my history. I can see why I deal with this.
Mhm.
Now I know. These are generational curses.
Yes.
Now I know.
Mhm. Yeah. It's real deep. It's real deep. Praise Yahuwah for his truth.
Absolutely.
Mhm. It's a daily cleansing and, coming into an understanding of his truth. And as you were saying before, this is how it goes. We have to seek him and allow him to
You
guide our
must.
steps.
You
Yes.
must.
And then that
You
way
must.
too, it'll help with not getting caught up in deception, because you come out of deception. So
that's the kicker. That's the kicker. When you've been in it for so long,
right.
everything else looks like deception.
Mm-hmm.
I will
Right.
promise you.
Right.
Hold on, let me grab something right here.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody on Facebook,
Mm-hmm.
and I have to thank her. She is a sweetheart. She did not know me from Eve, but we were in a Facebook group together.
Okay.
We were in a Facebook group together, and one day I had mentioned the father's name
Okay.
in their group. And immediately she took to me and she messaged me. She's like, I knew you were a sister. When I heard you use the father's name, I knew you were a sister. And
Awesome.
so she sent me a friend request and we started talking.
Oh.
But I will tell you that she actually purchased this for me. She purchased it for me, and she mailed it to me.
That's nice.
I can't tell you how many times I have heard, we're not supposed to be reading the Apocryphal books. They're not inspired. And my eyes have been opened. They've just been opened. I mean, wide open. I was like, what?
Yes.
All this history? All these things
Why
that
they took it out?
so many questions and blanks and things. All this stuff. And I was told not to read it because it's not inspired. And so I began thinking to myself, okay, well, if we read Bible commentary, why is that okay? But it's not okay to read Apocryphal books.
That's a good one.
So why is that okay? Because I mean, let's face it, those were written by man too.
Exactly. And they're really
And
just
that's
their own interpretation.
Exactly. So that's their spin on what's written in the scripture. Why is it okay to read Bible commentary, but it's not okay to read these? So, nope. I started reading the Apocryphal books, and yeah, they go deep.
Oh yes.
They go very deep.
Very deep. It gives like way better understanding to the scriptures.
Oh, yes.
And I'm like, so this is why they kept it out. Because when you read it, you start to understand more of a lot of the things you're reading, in the word. I'm like, why they kept it out?
That's why. It makes so much sense.
It does.
And when you hear over and over and over again that those books are not inspired, that you really shouldn't give much credence to them, they've been tampered with, blah blah blah, whatever have you, you get to that point where when you see it in the back of your mind, you're already thinking, can I trust what I read in here? Is it really true? Has it just been doctored? And I was like, you know what? Yahuwah, you've been so gracious this entire time. And you know that I have a desire for truth. If something is not true, I am trusting that you are going to show me. You are going to give me the spirit of discernment to say, you know what, wait a second, something doesn't sound right. Let me match it up with scriptures. Let me pray about it and let you lead. But I cannot be so fearful of wanting to be deceived or not wanting to be deceived that I don't venture into seeking the truth. He has allowed me to see that every bit of truth that he gives to me is like a new spark. This is why we need to stay in the word. This is why we need to continue to pray and to seek him daily, because he will always give you something new. He is always going to feed you, give you that extra spark. If you ever find yourself in a position where you're feeling Laodicean, where you're kind of feeling like, you know what, I don't like the position where I'm in, where I'm not on fire, then you have to start seeking him daily and saying, you know what, Yahuwah, please give me something. Give me something new. Make me fall in love with you all over again. And he will. He absolutely will.
Yes. Yes.
Every single bit of truth he gives me, everything is just like he lit that fire again. I'm like, yes, I just found something else. And so then I'm, looking through scriptures and looking up stuff online. I'm like, yes, another treasure.
It feels good, don't it?
It feels amazing.
Yes.
Absolutely amazing.
Yes, it does. So, Sister Andrea, how did you discover the name though? Like, when you heard, when was your first time hearing the name, and what led you to seek that part? I'm not
Actually,
sure
I
what they
think
call him in the Seventh Day, with the Seventh Day Adventist. I'm not
God,
sure. Just God, that's it.
God,
No names. They don't call him nothing. Just God. Like, no
God,
Jehovah.
God,
That's it.
Lord,
And Jesus.
yeah,
That's it. Wow.
yeah. I was actually in a Telegram group, and we meet every Sabbath. We meet every Sabbath for fellowship, and there are some people there that within the group that were calling him Yahuwah, and I think we even did. One of the brothers in the group did a study on it, and so I was like, "Huh, okay." And I think somebody had actually sent me or sent in the group a video, one of your videos. I can't remember which one it was, but they had sent me one of your videos. And I watched it and I was like, you know what? That's actually not too bad. And so I clicked on the channel and I started looking at some of the other videos. One of the ones that I was really drawn in by was the documentary that, I saw that your husband did.
Right.
And it was so comprehensive. I was like, what? Now, I had known, and I guess in the back of my mind, that his name wasn't Jesus. I had heard before that, he's Hebrew.
Right.
But I had never really had a comprehensive documentary done in such a way. Like, I'm pretty sure you're well versed and you will have people who call him Yahuwah, and there are some that call him Yeshua. And
right.
But I mean, your husband went deep. And I sat there and I looked and I was like, that all actually makes so much sense.
Hallelujah.
Especially bringing out the scriptures where he says, my people will know my name, my people who are called by my name. And I'm like, why is it that emphasis was never, we never had that emphasis before? You read those scriptures, but it doesn't really sink in.
Right.
But, when it was brought to me in that kind of light, I was like, that would make sense. If you take his name out and people don't know to call on his name, that scripture is not really going to make sense.
Right.
But if you know his name and you read that scripture, it's like, bang. Everything just kind of connects.
No, I say, that's what he meant. Like, that's
what he meant. That everything just kind of connects. And so I'm just like, oh, when you understand even what his name means, what his son's name means, the beauty in that, it just got to the point where I love saying his name.
Or hearing
I
it. I hear
love
somebody say it. I'm like,
saying and hearing his son's name. Yahushua, Yahuwah saves. Yahuwah is salvation. It's like a blanket that just wraps around you. And I'm like, how I can't go back. I don't want to go back.
no.
Don't take this blanket from me.
Right.
You
Right.
cannot take this blanket from me.
Exactly.
It
Exactly.
is so comforting.
Mm.
And
Yes.
I don't know. It just fills you with something.
Right.
It is so comforting.
Good feeling. So finally know, because now it's like I finally know who my father is. I'm not just
You
playing
finally know
with his word and playing church. I finally know. I finally have that personal relationship with him.
But then it also makes sense, even when you're reading back to the very names in scriptures, the names of the prophets, the names of the fathers that led you, what they mean. His name was written in his people. I'm like, what?
Yes, many of them.
All of this.
With Yahuwah at the end of their names. I'm like, wow, if I knew that, I would have named my children with Yah in it. I was like,
thank you.
I wish I would have known when I had my children.
I wish I would have known. That would have changed everything.
Everything.
But now I see why that was hidden. Can you imagine if we had a nation full of children with Yah's name written in? There would be a lot of very fearful people.
Right.
Very fearful people.
They knew what they was doing with hiding all of this.
They knew. They knew. The enemy knew what he was doing.
He's
takes out
revealing
the enemy's name and he leaves his in there. He knew.
Yes, he did. But we're living in some great times right now, perilous times, but still great, because a lot of people are starting to awaken, more now than ever when it comes to the true name and, getting a better, personal relationship with Yahuwah.
Absolutely.
Coming out of religion, because this walk is not a religion. It's not.
No. It's a way of life.
Way of life.
Something completely different.
Yes. Yes.
Wow. I don't think, I was telling my son, it was either yesterday or the day before, but I was telling my son that if somebody had told me 10 years ago, 15 years ago, that I would walk away from mainstream Christianity, I would have told you, you have lost your mind. You need to get away from me with that blasphemy.
Oh, yes.
I would not have listened. I would have thought you were a complete nutcase.
Right.
And that would have been the end of that conversation. To know just how much paganism is in Christianity. And to get to that point, to say, you know what, I don't want to have anything to do with any paganism in any way, shape, or form. If there are things that I am doing in my life that are because of what I was taught, if there are things that I am doing and believing in my life that are not of you, then you're going to have to show me how to get rid of it, what it is, so that I can get rid of it.
Right.
I want to be that peculiar people that you have called me to be. And if that means that I have to walk away from everything that I have known, as painful as that is,
very painful, right?
I will have to do it. I will do it. It's not that I have to do it. I will do it. That is a choice that I am choosing to make. I will do it.
Yes.
And it's not easy.
Right.
I'm sure that that once the word gets out,
I
that there
didn't
will
know
be
your
phone
family
calls,
didn't. I did
there
not
will be
know.
emails,
All right.
there will there will
Yeah,
be
what happened?
there will be there will be the messages. I'm praying for you,
Yes, just prepare yourself. I'm sure you have
and
already.
I'm like, well, please continue to pray for me. Please continue to pray for me.
Mhm.
But pray that Yahuwah continues to lead me in the way everlasting.
Yes. Yes.
Not necessarily back to what I knew before, but leads me in his way.
Right.
If you truly love me,
Right.
pray that he leads me in his way.
Right. Right. Yeah. Wow. That's good. I mean, this is I'm happy that we had this conversation because this is important because we never know who's on the channel and who's listening, and it's just good to share these type of things because a lot of people, they're still in deception. And so, to be able to share your testimony and how Yah has brought you into the truth and is guiding you, guiding you
Mhm.
in your footsteps, and how you're developing a personal relationship with him. This is something that's, good to let other people hear and let other people see what he's doing in your life.
I
And
think it's also important to say that my journey is not going to look like everybody else's.
right, right,
That was an important thing for me to realize.
right,
Um, how Yahuwah communicates with somebody is not going to be the same way that he communicates with me. I
right,
learn very differently from
right,
somebody else. They learn differently from the way I learn. And
right.
so, how he communicates with me, the things that he shows me, is not going to be identical to how
Hmm.
he communicates with somebody else.
Right.
And that is something that people need to realize.
Mhm.
Everybody's walk is different,
Right,
everybody's journey is different,
right.
but he's going to
I
lead
agree.
everybody to the same truth.
Right,
That's
right.
the thing. His truth is not going to be different for different people.
Hmm.
He doesn't change.
Right,
He's the same
right.
yesterday, today, and forever.
Exactly.
So
Right. That I
it's just
agree with.
important.
I agree with
Yes,
because we
it's
like.
important.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. Mhm.
No. You continue.
I'm sorry. You sure you
No.
can?
Continue. Continue your thought.
No, I was going to say, that's how I agree with you because, like, how I look at it and how I mean, it's important for all believers, all of us, to look at it like that. Is pretty much being
Mm,
seed planters, because we have no power. Yah
right.
has all the power, So that's how when I look at everything is seed planters. But Yah, He gives the increase. He does the rest, you know. So I just wanted to share that. That's what I was thinking of when you said that.
I'm glad that you brought that up because that was something that he's definitely had to work with me on, and the fact that I don't have any power. I don't have any
Mm.
control except what he gives me.
Right.
And that's been one of the biggest lessons that he's been working with me on. I
Mhm.
know that I have not completely gotten the victory over that because I still try to do things on my own,
Mm.
but he's been so merciful in showing me that, you know what, this illusion of control
Hmm.
that you think you have needs to be broken.
Mm.
You don't have control. You have what I allow you to have,
Mhm.
the control to make decisions that are placed in front of you. Either you can choose the right one or you choose the wrong one. But ultimately, I am the one that is in control.
Mhm.
And so I know that there are people that can identify with this. We tend to beat our fists and throw temper tantrums when things don't go our way because we actually think that we have some control over the outcome. We have no control.
None.
We have zero
None.
control
And
other
he
than to
has
make the choices that are left in front of us. And that has been a huge wall that Yahuwah is breaking down in me. This idea of control, that I've got it all together. I can do. No, no, Andrea, you cannot.
He
You
has
have
his
the
ways of
control that Yahuwah has given you. And I am getting to the point where I'm getting to the point where I am liking giving up this idea of control.
Right.
Where I am coming to him and saying, okay, you know what? These are the decisions that are placed in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
Which one should I choose? Which
Right.
way I go? I can either do this or I can do this. Which would bring you praise? Which will bring you glory? What won't? And I think when each of us get to the point where even with the small decisions that we bring to him, when we get to that point where we consult him for everything, when the big decisions come along, it's going to be second nature. Just asking him, which way should I walk in? What's the pathway you want to walk in? And eventually it's just going to become so commonplace with us. We will become so in sync with him that we will just instinctively know, you know what, this is the way that's going to give you a praise. This is the way I'm going to walk in it.
Right. Mm-hmm.
That is where I want to be. That is where I want my children to be. That's where I want, my brothers and sisters to be.
Right.
At that place where we are so in sync with Yahuwah, that our wills are so tightly entwined that we
Right.
just instinctively know, you know what, this is his will.
Right.
This is the way we're going to walk.
Mm-hmm.
That's my goal. That's what I want. I want that more than anything.
Yeah. And that comes with the relationship. That
It
relationship.
has to.
Mm-hmm. Right. So, Sister Andrea, like, what would be some advice that you can give to maybe some who are listening who may be new to the walk, or those who are might be on the fence a little bit? Like, what is some advice that you can give to them?
I think the best thing that I did, or the most profound thing that I did, was to disconnect from everything else, from everybody else. That was a thing that kind of solidified my decision for me, was when I just turned off every other voice. And I said, Yahuwah, it's you and me. This is it. No outside voices, no other people's opinion. It's just us. And I'm going to dedicate however long it takes until I am solid in this decision. So whatever it is that you need to do, whatever walls you need to break down in me, whatever it is, whatever blinders I have on, whatever it is that is in my life that is preventing me from seeing you for who you are, this is the time that I'm asking you to remove it. Take off the blinders, take off any preconceived notions, take out other people's opinions, even quiet my own voice. There have been times where I have prayed and my prayer has literally been 30 seconds where I'm just like, okay, you know what, I tend to talk a lot. I talk a lot. I said, I need to be twice as silent as I am talkative. So you know what? I am thanking you for the mercies of another day. I'm thanking you for the blessings that you have the blessings of protection that you have granted me and my family throughout the night. But this next hour or this next 2 hours, excuse me, I need to hear your voice.
Right.
I don't want to talk anymore. I need to hear you. And I will sit down on my couch and I will read the word. So many times I think we talk more than we listen. And it's not that Yahuwah doesn't mind hearing from us. He loves hearing from us. But if we spend half as much time hearing from him than we do talking to him, what good is it? How much are we actually getting in? I mean, let me give you an analogy. I drive a big truck. And the thing has got almost like a 40-gallon tank.
Oh.
If I put only half in there, I can go a distance, but I'm not going to go as far as I would be able to go if I filled my tank. So I'd be much better off to just go ahead and fill that tank. So many of us we're running spiritually on empty, or we're running spiritually on half a tank.
Right.
And it may get us partway through the day.
Right.
You know, we may get into the evening and then somebody says or does something and then we snap. We need our spiritual tanks filled. So even if that means that you might have to spend a little less time complaining to Yahuwah in prayer and asking him for things and saying, you know what, Yahuwah, I'm so thankful to you for what you have done. You are so gracious and so loving and merciful. But I talk too much. I need to hear from you. I want to hear your voice. And then open up his word and let him talk. That is so important. And I've heard that a long time. I didn't realize the impact of it until I began doing it. And for those that wish to begin that, I will tell you now, expect distractions. The enemy does not want you to read the word. He does not want you to hear from Yahuwah. He wants to make sure that his voice to you is as clouded and as garbled as you can imagine. I promise you, you will probably hear things like phone notifications going off and people walking around in your house, and intrusive thoughts will start coming in. Before you know it, you'll be reading something and then your mind just kind of wanders. Reel those thoughts in. Get your thoughts under control. You know what? Even if you have to utter a quick prayer to Yahuwah and say, you know what, Yahuwah, please keep my mind focused. Rebuke the enemy. Rebuke him, rebuke him, rebuke him. He is counting on the fact that you will not do that. Rebuke him out loud. Just tell him, no, this is Yahuwah's time. You will not tempt me. You need to flee in the name of Yeshua and get back to reading your word. Everything is going to try to happen to distract you. The enemy knows the scriptures better than we do. And he knows the power that is in them. He's counting on the fact that you and I don't. So it has to be a concerted effort and fight against every single distraction. Every single one. There have been times where I felt like spiritually I was just drowning, fighting for air. And I'm like, I'm just fighting underneath the weight of all of this. And it was through him, it was through the Ruach that just told me, you know what? You need to rebuke the enemy. You have to.
Right.
And you have to do it out loud.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So it's got to be done. It
Right.
has to be
Yes.
done.
Yes, it does. That was some great advice. Some great advice. Yep. So I mean, I guess that's it. We're just was wrapping up. I don't know if you have any final words, or that's it. Pretty much. I mean, that's a lot. It was good. It was good.
The only thing that I will say
Mhm,
was that before I did this interview,
mhm,
I had prayed. I prayed last night. I prayed this morning. I asked my brothers and sisters in the Telegram group, I said, please pray for me.
mm.
Because the last thing that I want to do is to bring any glory to
Oh,
myself.
right,
That is the last thing, excuse me, that I wanted to do.
right,
This is not about me.
right.
Yahuwah has been so patient with me,
Mm.
so patient, far more than I deserve.
Many of us. All
And I know for anybody else out there listening, I know what it is like to be in religion and still feel lost.
mm,
I know what it is like. I know what it's like to go to church every single week and still feel like something is missing, like your relationship is incomplete, like it is surface. I completely understand. And if that is what you're feeling, if that is what you're going through, the only person that can help you is Yahuwah.
mm-hmm.
That is the only person, and you must cry out to him. Do not ignore those feelings. They are there for a reason. It's there for a reason. Seek him diligently, wholeheartedly. Even if your prayers come out like a mumbled, jumbled, crying mess. I can't tell you how many times I have sat out in my car crying, and the words that came out of my mouth were not even audible. It
Mm.
was just a mumbling of emotions. He hears you, he understands you. Tell him exactly what's going on, the good, the bad, and the ugly. If you feel like he's abandoned you, tell him. If you're mad at him, tell him. If, regardless of what it is, tell him. His shoulders are broad enough, he can handle it. But you have to be honest. You cannot continue to have a surface relationship. I promise you. I promise you with everything that is in me. When he shows you who he is and he draws you close, there is nothing on earth that beats that feeling. Nothing. You will never want to go back to what you were doing. You won't.
Sure.
When the Bible says that he's a consuming fire,
Mm-hmm.
truer words have never been spoken. So I would urge each and every one of you, if you're feeling incomplete in your walk, don't ignore that feeling. Seek him before it's too late.
Mm-hmm.
That's
All right.
that's my only advice. That's the
Only.
same thing that I that's what I would tell my children. That's what I would
Yes,
tell anybody
that,
else.
that was some. That was great. That was some great advice. Great advice. Yes. Hallelujah. Well, thank you so much.
Thank
I
you.
really appreciate you sitting with me and doing this. To Yahuwah be the esteem.
Amen.
Yes, yes, yes.
Amen.
So we'll be wrapping
Always.
up. Well, I'm wrapping up.
Okay.